Hey, welcome to a new video. Our world is vast, with countless places to hide or get lost for days. But there's also been people who found themselves in the most unimaginable situations. Are you new to this channel? Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And before we start, also like the video. Carl Akeley is considered the father of modern taxidermy. Taxidermy is when you engage in preparing or stuffing animals. However, Carl has one of the most astounding stories of all time. During his expedition to Africa in 1896, in what is now Somalia, he saw movement in a nearby thicket at night. Out of nowhere, a leopard charged him. Carl was firmly grasped, but he refused to give up. He fought back with his bare hands against the leopard that eventually let him go. In shock, Carl made his way back to camp where his colleagues took care of him. Fortunately, Carl survived and continued his work, but with a new respect for the dangers of African wilderness. The rescue of baby Jessica on October 16, 1987 is a remarkable story that touched the hearts of people around the world. The 18-month-old girl fell into an abandoned water well while playing with other children in the backyard of the daycare. Rescue workers faced a tremendous challenge as they worked tirelessly for 58 hours to save her. Teams of rescuers and local volunteers collaborated to drill a shaft parallel to the well in which Jessica was trapped. They then had to dig horizontally through the dense rocks to connect the two shafts. Jessica remained conscious throughout the entire rescue operation, and her voice, cries, singing, and humming could even be heard through the microphone lowered into the well. Finally, on the evening of October 16, 1987, she was lifted out of the well. The girl was covered in dirt, but the most important thing is that she was well and alive. People around the world breathed a sigh of relief. In 2011, it was reported that Jessica gained access to a trust fund of at least $800,000, established after her rescue and made up of donations from people around the world. Identical twins, both named Jim, led impressive and unusually identical lives. When they were 3 weeks old, they were separated. Their adoptive parents, who knew they were twins, never had contact, yet they both named their children Jim. One brother was raised by the Lewis family of Lima, Ohio, while the other brother was raised by the Springers family of Pica, a town nearby. As children, they both had a dog named Toy. And in school, they both had an interest in math and wood carving. Both married twice, first to women named Linda and then to women named Betty. Then they both had a son with the same name. They even drove the same car and both worked in security. It was in 1977, when they were 39 years old, that they were reunited. Many people were very surprised at the identical lives they lived, and it's actually still a mystery how this could be, or if it was just coincidence. The strange disappearance and reappearance of Dr. William Horatio Bates in August 1902 is highly unusual. Dr. Bates was well known and wealthy in New York City, but one day he suddenly vanished, leaving behind his wife and a comfortable life. Shortly before his disappearance, his wife received a hurried message stating that he had to leave and would quickly return, but he never did. After several days of searching, Ms. Bates received a letter from Britain stating that a man resembling her husband had been found in a hospital in London. Despite having access to a substantial bank account, Dr. Bates claimed to have suffered hunger at various times. When Ms. Bates arrived in London, her husband didn't recognize her and had no recollection of his previous life. The woman stayed in London, hoping that her husband would regain his memory. However, 2 days after her arrival, he abruptly left the city and disappeared once again into the crowds of London. Ms. Bates never saw her husband again. She held out hope for a miracle, but ultimately passed away in 1907. Dr. Bates eventually resurfaced, though in an unexpected location. A friend recognized him and convinced him to return to New York. However, the man never regained his memories of his previous life. Gene Moe was a seasoned Alaska bush pilot who had spent much of his life exploring the wilderness of Alaska. In 1999, he was on a solo hunting trip when he encountered a massive Kodiak bear. Despite years of experience and knowledge, Gene was overwhelmed by the bear and fought back. The bear tackled him, and from that point on, it was a struggle that Gene miraculously won. He was lucky to have a knife on him, and that the bear decided to retreat. Gene eventually got up and fled the area. He then managed to get himself to safety and seek medical help for his injuries. The incident drew attention to the dangers of hunting in Alaska and the unpredictability of bears. The case of Colleen Stan is a tragic tale of captivity that captured global attention in the late 1970s. Colleen, then 20 years old, was hitchhiking to visit a friend in Northern California when she was picked up by Cameron and Janice at a hitchhiking spot. The couple took Colleen to their home, where they kept her in a box in the basement. Over the next 16 years, Colleen was forced to live in this box, sometimes for up to 23 hours a day. During her captivity, Colleen was subjected to a series of horrific things, but eventually, the girl managed to escape thanks to Janice, who developed more sympathy for her. She took the girl to the bus station, contacted her family, and eventually returned to her home. The girl decided not to speak to the authorities for the first few months, but when Janice turned herself into the police, Cameron was eventually charged and sentenced to 104 years in prison. Harrison O'Keefe was the chef on board the Jason IV vessel. When the ship capsized in the heavy seas of the Gulf of Guinea in the Atlantic Ocean on May 26, 2013, the boat was resting upside down on the seabed at a depth of 100 feet or 30 meters. When the boat suddenly tipped over and turned over, Harrison grabbed nearby tools, a life jacket, and 2 flashlights. He went to the engineer's office, which looked safer, and began making a platform out of a stack of mattresses that held his upper body above the water. Because the event was unexpected, he wore only boxer shorts while the temperature began to drop. With only 1 bottle of Coke to keep him alive, he remained trapped in the ship for 3 days, until he was rescued by divers who were investigating how the ship had capsized. In an attempt to break into a house in downtown Tucson, a man got stuck in the chimney, leading to a bizarre rescue operation by emergency services. Upon arrival at the scene, the fire department had to employ their problem-solving skills and figure out how to free the intruder from his precarious position. By that time, he had been stuck for hours but emerged without a scratch, straight into the arms of law enforcement. However, it remains unclear why the man decided to enter the house through the chimney, but it's certainly strange. Can you imagine someone entering your house through the chimney? What would you do in that situation? Let me know in the comments. Have you ever wondered what the mouth and insides of a hippopotamus smell like? Paul Templar can answer that. He said it smelled like rotten eggs. Filling in for a colleague who had contracted malaria, Paul was working as a tour guide on Zambezi River in Zimbabwe when a massive hippopotamus torpedoed through the water and dragged him in. Despite the size and power of the hippopotamus, Paul refused to give up. He fought back with all his might, punching and kicking the face and eyes of the hippopotamus in an attempt to escape. After several minutes of intense struggle, the hippopotamus finally let him go and swam away. Friends came to his aid and rushed him to the hospital. Fortunately, Paul was able to survive and tell the tale of this incident, because hippopotamus are some of the most dangerous animals on land. The incredible story of Tammy's survival at sea is one that will have you amazed and inspired. She was found 41 days later on a partially destroyed ship. In 1983, Tammy embarked on a journey from Tahiti to San Diego with Richard. However, when they encountered Hurricane Raymond in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, their journey quickly turned into a fight for survival. During the storm, Tammy lost consciousness, and when she regained it, she found herself alone on the damaged yacht, far away from land. Sadly, Richard did not survive the storm. Without communication or navigation equipment, limited food and water, and an injured leg, she had to use her wits to survive. She spent 41 days alone at sea, grappling with dehydration, malnutrition, and the unforgiving elements of the open ocean. To survive, Tammy had to collect rainwater, repair ships, and navigate the yacht using only a simple chart and the stars. Miraculously, after 41 days at sea, Tammy was rescued by a passing cargo ship. Paul Rosy is an American conservationist and author whose work has covered the rich forest areas of the Amazon rainforest. He was also host of Discovery Channel's nature documentary titled Eaten Alive, where Paul attempted to be eaten alive by 18-foot or 5.5-meter long anaconda. He put on a special carbon fiber suit to protect his ribs as the snake tried to swallow him, and he also wore a special helmet that would provide him with oxygen. The plan was to wait until Paul was swallowed to his waist before his team pulled him out. However, the experiment had to be stopped after an hour because the snake went to his head. The snake was fine, and according to Paul, the experience was absolutely terrifying. Many viewers of the documentary were outraged by this. What do you think about this action? Let me know in the comments. This is the chilling story of a man who got trapped in a narrow sewer pipe beneath the parking lot of Pulkovo International Airport in St. Petersburg. In the video, we see a man struggling and wiggling to free himself while rescue workers attempt to extract him from his confined position. According to reports, the man was trying to clean the sewer pipes when he got stuck and was subsequently pulled out of the narrow pipe shirtless. It's an event that certainly highlights the dangers of venturing into confined spaces without proper planning and equipment. The potential hazards of entering a confined space like a sewer pipe can include reduced oxygen levels, toxic substances in the air, and the risk of entrapment or asphyxiation. For those who survive, it's an experience that they'll never forget. Surprisingly, sewers also pose another well-known hazard as they can attract dangerous insects and snakes. This is why you shouldn't have wild animals as pets, no matter how cute they may be. It always ends in tragedy, on both sides. For years, Travis the chimpanzee was a local celebrity in his Connecticut town. His family, Sandra and Jerome Harold, treated him like a child, dressing and feeding him, and even taking him to their workplace. After Jerome passed away, the chimpanzee had erratic and wild moments, running away from home to roam the streets. On a fateful day, the chimpanzee escaped and attacked a woman. She called 911, and it took several minutes for authorities to arrive. The woman survived, but was left with numerous disfigurements and blindness in her face. Years later, she became an advocate for animal welfare and worked to raise awareness about the dangers of keeping wild animals as pets. Christopher McCanless was an American adventurer and traveler who gained fame after his death in 1992. After graduating, he donated his savings to charity, abandoned all his possessions, and embarked on a journey of self-discovery across the United States. He was inspired by the works of writers like Henry David Thoreau and Jack London, who wrote about living in harmony with nature. In April 1992, Christopher set off on a remote trail in Alaska, hoping to live off the land for months. He had minimal supplies and was ill-prepared for the rugged wilderness of Alaska. He managed to survive for a few weeks, but eventually succumbed to starvation. His body was discovered by moose hunters in an abandoned bus where he had been staying. Aloha Airlines 243 was a flight that was flying from the town of Hilo to Honolulu, Hawaii on April 28, 1988, when the roof of the plane was suddenly ripped off. This is said to have happened because of hairline cracks that the inspections had not noticed. There were 6 crew members on board with 89 passengers, and miraculously, the pilot managed to land the plane at the nearest airport. All but one person had survived, and because of this event, the rules for aircraft maintenance were strictly changed. Richard Hogland seems like an ordinary, hard-working family man from Indianapolis. However, in the early 90s, strange behavior hinted at unseen troubles. This man, once considered energetic and friendly, began spending countless hours in solitude, causing concern for his wife, Linda. When he suddenly disappeared after reporting a fake medical emergency, his family was left anxious, bewildered, and ultimately broken. His absence also left behind a string of financial problems that the family struggled to bear. The state declared Richard dead in 2003, and Linda remarried in an attempt to move on from the past. However, in a shocking turn of events, Richard was found in 2016, having lived in Florida under the assumed identity of Terry Samansky, a man who had died in a fishing accident. His new life included a wife, a son, and even a pilot's license. This revelation came thanks to the real Terry's nephew, who discovered the imposter while researching his family history on Ancestry.com. During his trial, Richard gave a simple explanation for his actions. He no longer wanted to be a part of his family's life. Escaping his past seemed more comfortable to him than a divorce and the obligation of child support. The legal system found him guilty of identity theft and sentenced him to only 2 years in prison, much to Linda's dismay. Ultimately, Linda sued Richard for $1.8 million in unpaid child support, emotional distress, and divorce proceedings, and she won the lawsuit. Ben Koshin is an experienced nature photographer who has spent most of his life exploring the wilderness of Manitoba in northern Canada. On April 17, 1922, he was camping in the remote woods when he heard the unmistakable sound of a wolf pack in the distance. Despite his years of experience, he knew he was in a potentially dangerous situation and began to prepare himself. Minutes later, he was surrounded by a pack of snarling wolves and was able to defend himself with a rifle despite being cornered. However, Ben did not give up and used all his strength and endurance to fight back. After what seemed like an eternity, the wolves finally retreated. Ben then found his way back to civilization and was rushed to the hospital, where he was treated. In a bizarre incident, a 29-year-old man was found trapped in a grease ventilation shaft of a Chinese restaurant. The reason why the man decided to climb onto the roof of the restaurant is still unknown, but it led to him being stuck for 2 painful days. After descending about 5 feet, or 1.5 meters, the man reached a bend in the shaft, causing him to be in a semi-crouched position with his arms immobilized above his head. Desperate and unable to move, the man began calling for help. However, his cries were muffled by the layers of rancid oil surrounding him, keeping him captive in the darkness. Fortunately, the owner of a nearby business discovered him and contacted the authorities. Rescuing the trapped man proved to be a formidable challenge for the fire department, as the sharp edges of the shaft could have caused serious injury. Additionally, he was covered in oil from head to toe, making it difficult to pull him out without sliding back down. After hours of planning, they finally succeeded in freeing him from the shaft. Hironoda was a soldier of the Imperial Japanese Army who remained loyal to his post in the Philippine jungles for 29 years, even after World War II. The man was assigned to the Philippine island of Lubang. He was with 3 other soldiers, and they built bamboo huts for their shelter while they searched for rice and other food. Haru once found pamphlets, a piece of paper that said the war was over in 1945. However, he thought this was an enemy plan to draw them out, so they stayed at their posts. By 1950, Haru was only on his own. And in 1974, a student found the man in the woods and tried to convince him that the war was over. The student showed him pictures, and the Japanese government finally managed to convince him and sent him back to Japan. Richard Louis Preki was an American naturalist and outdoorsman who was best known for a self-sufficient lifestyle in the wilderness of Alaska. In 1968, at the age of 51, he left his home in Iowa and moved to an area in Alaska called Twin Lakes, where he hand-built a log cabin using traditional tools and materials. Richard documented his progress through diaries and film, capturing every moment. Of course, he was discovered by both tourists and park rangers, and he immediately formed friendships with some of them. Richard's motivation to build his log cabin had stemmed from his desire for self-sufficient lifestyle in harmony with nature. He was deeply inspired by the natural beauty of Alaska and felt a strong connection to the land. He believed that leading a simpler, more sustainable life was not only better for the environment, but also more fulfilling and rewarding. However, he had to contend with harsh weather conditions, including freezing temperatures, heavy snowfall, and powerful winds, while being far away from civilization. Wes Cyanine is a farmer from Zambia who had a remarkable experience surviving both an elephant and a crocodile attack. In 2018, he was working on his farm when a herd of 5 elephants attacked him. To avoid being trampled, he jumped into the river. He thought he was safe, but at one point he felt a sharp pain in his leg, and when he looked down, he saw the eyes of a crocodile staring back at him. However, he miraculously managed to break free and survive the attack. It's crucial to respect nature and take necessary precautions to avoid dangerous encounters. He also believes that God helped him in a mysterious way, as surviving an encounter between these 2 animals is not something that normally happens. Gabriel Napier was a man from Newcastle, Australia, who disappeared on January 21, 1987, and his car was later found in the national park. His family and friends searched for him, but he seemed to have vanished without a trace. For decades, Gabriel's disappearance remained a mystery. His family gave up hope and had no idea what had happened to him. But then, 23 years later, Gabriel was found. He was living under a new identity and had no memories of his former life, except for strange flashes that he couldn't understand. He was diagnosed with dissociative amnesia, a condition in which someone loses their memory or identity and past due to severe stress or trauma. It's still unclear what Gabriel experienced during the 23 years he was missing. Some speculate that he intentionally disappeared and started a new life, while others believe he has simply forgotten his former life. What do you think the truth is? Mike Wiersky was 54 years old when he bought a ticket for $2 at a local gas station, and then won a huge sum of a whopping $273 million. But this almost didn't happen because he had lost the ticket a few days before the lottery draw. Fortunately, an honest cashier named Phil Campolo, who worked at the gas station, had found the ticket and returned it. Mike was probably on the phone and got distracted and forgot to take the ticket with him. The next morning, when Mike returned to the store, Phil gave him his ticket back. The drawing was held, and it was a big surprise that Mike was suddenly extremely wealthy. Before this, he had been unemployed for 15 years, so his win changed his whole life. The lottery informed that if the person had kept the ticket and signed it, he could have claimed the amount won. So let's hope that Mike rewarded Phil for his honesty. Babu had embarked on a solo trek in an attempt to reach the summit of Karambuchi Peak in Malampuza, Kerala. While climbing a steep and narrow crevice, he slipped and fell into a ravine, where he became trapped. For over 24 hours, Babu was stuck in the ravine without food or water. He sustained injuries to his leg and arm and was in urgent need of help. Babu's ordeal was exacerbated by the extreme weather conditions in the area, with temperatures dropping to as low as 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius. He was also exposed to rain and strong winds, making his situation even more perilous. A rescue operation was initiated with the assistance of local authorities and the Indian Army. The rescue team faced numerous challenges due to the difficult terrain and tight space in which Babu was trapped. They worked for hours and eventually succeeded in rescuing the boy, after which he was taken to a nearby hospital for treatment. In 1997, Mike Coots was surfing off the coast of Hawaii when a great white shark bit his right leg and dragged him underwater. Despite the bite, he remained calm and managed to fight back. He punched the shark in the nose, causing it to release him. Mike lost his leg in the incident, but decided to keep surfing. Another story comes from a man named Todd Endress, who was surfing off the coast of California in 2007 when a 4.5-meter-long great white shark approached him. However, a school of dolphins came to his aid, acting as a barrier between him and the shark. Todd survived the incident and had the courage to keep surfing and overcome his fears. Would you still surf if this happened to you? Let me know in the comments. The Bella in the Witch Elm is a mysterious incident that took place in 1943 in England and remains unsolved to this day. In April of that same year, 4 boys were wandering in Hagley Woods near Stourbridge when they discovered human remains inside the hollow of a witch elm tree. The body was in a crouched position, and all that remained were bones and some pieces of clothing. The lack of any identification raised suspicion, and an investigation began immediately. The incident became known as Bella in the Witch Elm because of an intriguing graffiti message found nearby, which read, "Who put Bella in the Witch Elm?" The graffiti fueled the mystery surrounding the case, but the identity of the victim remained unknown. Theories and hypotheses emerged, ranging from espionage to witchcraft. One theory suggested that Bella was a German spy who had parachuted into England and was later found and killed by British resistance. Others believe that the victim was a local prostitute who was murdered by one of her clients. However, none of these theories have been proven, and the case remains unsolved. In February 1963, when the temperature dropped below -40 degrees, Ralph Flores and Helen Klaben became lost for 49 days. But this time, it wasn't at sea, but in the wilderness of Canada's Yukon Territory. Flores was a pilot who had to make an emergency landing with his private plane. All the equipment on the plane had stopped working, and the two managed to gather supplies, which took them 10 days. For the next few days, they lived mostly on boiled water. They were finally found after 2 pilots saw their SOS letter in the snow near a frozen pond, with an arrow pointing in their direction. Their survival story became a worldwide story that made the front page of all kinds of news outlets. A year later, it was even made into a movie called Hey, I'm Alive, which was based on the memoirs Helen wrote down. Among other things, she wrote that Ralph had taught her in the wilderness about faith, courage, endurance, and strength. In 2004, a tsunami in the Indian Ocean caused the 3rd largest earthquake ever recorded. The tsunami traveled at speeds of up to 500 miles per hour, or 805 kilometers per hour, and reached heights of up to 100 feet, or 30 meters. And there, on the beach, stood an 8-year-old boy named Martunas. He was separated from his family and swept away by the waves. For days, Martunas was lost and alone, surviving on nothing but rainwater and dried noodles. He spent those days crying and barely holding on. But miraculously, he was found by a group of soldiers searching for survivors. They brought him to a hospital where he was treated for dehydration. He was later taken in by the national football team of Portugal. He wore a football jersey with the number 7, the same number superstar Cristiano Ronaldo wore when he was found. Later, he had the opportunity to meet Ronaldo in person, who was touched by his story and gave him a signed jersey. Otters may be cute and all, but when it comes down to it, the official advice is to stay far away from them. 77-year-old Sue Spector was kayaking along the Waikiki River in central Florida, when an otter suddenly jumped into her kayak and attacked her. The otter used all of the techniques it knew, biting, scratching, and clawing, but Sue managed to defend herself with a paddle. On land, humans may be at the top of the hierarchy, but our importance dramatically decreases when we enter the territory of animals. If she didn't have her paddle, she probably wouldn't have survived. Sue was rushed to the hospital where she needed multiple stitches, and she also suffered a number of scars on her arms, legs, and face. The spillway at Longhorn Dam in Austin, Texas is an impressive 36 feet or 11 meters high and 2,231 feet or 680 meters long. It's designed to safely divert excess water from the city in case of heavy rainfall. However, it's not intended for rescuing people hanging over the edge. Prior to this incident, there have been other cases of boats dangerously approaching the spillway, prompting calls for improved safety measures. On June 10, 2021, a group of water sports enthusiasts were rescued from a fall over the dam's edge. The terrifying incident occurred when the group's boat approached the spillway and became stuck in the current, prompting the passengers to call for help. Fortunately, responders quickly arrived at the scene to initiate the rescue operation. The water sports enthusiasts were visibly shaken, but thankfully all emerged unharmed. When Indian Saru Brealey was 5 years old, he was separated from his family when he fell asleep on a train that took him 1,000 miles or 1,600 kilometers from his home. He was with his older brother at the time, who told him to wait on the platform, but Saru became impatient and boarded the train. The train stopped in what was then called Kolkata, where they spoke Bengali, and Saru could not understand this language. After a while of living on the streets, he ended up in an orphanage and was eventually adopted by the Australian couple Sue and John Brealey. 25 years later, Saru used Google Earth in his visual memory to find his hometown in central India. In 2012, he was reunited with his family. Saru wrote his extraordinary story in the book A Long Way From Home, which in 2016 was made into a movie called Lion. No cell phone signal, no sense of direction, and no way to get help. It's a terrifying situation, especially for someone of Peter's age. He was 75 years old when he went missing during a walk in Brancaster, Norfolk. Fortunately, he was found alive and well 24 hours later, thanks to modern technology. The use of a drone by the Norfolk police played a crucial role in locating Peter. The police deployed a drone to search the marshes in the area, and when they found him, they were able to guide the rescue team to his location. Despite the potential for a tragic outcome, the actions of the police drones led to a positive ending. Ben Nyambi is a Kenyan conservationist who has dedicated his life to protecting the nature in the country. However, his passion for conservation almost cost him his life when he was attacked by a huge python. While he was working on his farm, he accidentally stepped on a python that was 4 meters long. According to the story, the python coiled around his body and then dragged him up a tree. Despite Ben's efforts to break free, the snake continued to cling to him, but he eventually managed to break free and ran to the nearby village where he called for help. However, the incident did not deter Ben from his mission to work with wild animals and snakes. He continues to advocate for their conservation and their importance in the ecosystem. Imagine this. You're taking a hike in a forest reserve, enjoying the rugged beauty of nature surrounding you. You take a wrong turn and suddenly find yourself lost without food, water, or cell phone signal. The forest is vast, and you're at the mercy of the unforgiving terrain. This was the exact situation for Amanda Eller, a yoga instructor from Hawaii. For 17 grueling days, Amanda had to rely on her instincts, faith, and resilience to survive in the Makawa Forest Reserve. During the ordeal, helicopters hovered over the forest, but they couldn't spot her due to the dense canopy of trees and vegetation. Amanda had to fend for herself, completely alone in the wilderness. As she walked through the forest, she felt a voice guiding her, telling her which paths to take and which ones to avoid. She trusted this voice and kept walking, even when it seemed like she was going deeper into the woods. And eventually, after 17 long days, Amanda was found alive, next to a waterfall in the forest and near a cliff. She later described her experience, which ended with a broken leg, as spiritual. If you were stranded, would you also listen to the voice in your head if it told you where to go? The 1960 Traub motorcycle has to be one of the most rarest finds in the world. It's a unique classic that was found in a wall in a Chicago apartment more than 50 years ago. In 1968, a plumber was renovating the old apartment and had to tear down a brick wall. Surprisingly, an old bike was hidden behind it with the name Traub written on the tank. After the discovery, the previous owner of the building was tracked down, and it was revealed that their son had stolen a motorcycle many years ago, before he was called up upon to serve in the military. The idea was that he kept the motorcycle until he returned, but this didn't happen, and so the motorcycle was left behind until one day it was found. The most mysterious part of the story is that even after 50 years, the motorcycle was still working properly. The story of Stephen Kubak will keep you up at night. In 1978, Stephen was a student at Hope College when he disappeared during a cross-country skiing trip in Saugatucket, Michigan. Stephen was an experienced skier and planned to be away for just a few days, but he never returned home. The search for him began promptly but was called off after a week when no trace of him was found. After 3 months, a fisherman discovered a pair of cross-country skis and a backpack floating on Lake Michigan, near where Steven was last seen. Authorities believed he had fallen through the ice and drowned, with his body being swept away by the lake's undertow. However, the mystery started to unravel in May 1979, when he was found lying in the grass in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, about 621 miles or 1,000 kilometers away from where he disappeared. He had no memory of the preceding 15 months, and his last recollection was of the shore of Lake Michigan, where he had left his footprints in the snow. Steven was found wearing strange clothing and carrying a backpack full of maps. There's many theories about the man's disappearance and return, with some suggesting he suffered from amnesia, while others believe he was abducted by extraterrestrial beings. Some people have speculated that Steven's experience may be related to the Bermuda Triangle, a mysterious area in the Atlantic Ocean where ships and planes have vanished without a trace. 10 years before Scott Castle came face-to-face with the giant Humboldt squid, he had dedicated his life to studying and protecting all kinds of ocean creatures. In the village where he lived, the inhabitants called this squid the Red Demon. During one of his expeditions, Scott found himself in a threatening situation where he was attacked by a giant Humboldt squid. Squids don't make sounds, but Scott remembers the sound of the thousands of teeth of the squid. The squid rushed past him, became very aggressive, and wrapped its 10-meter-long tentacles around his arms and legs. Despite the squid's strength, Scott managed to fight back and free himself from its grip. He then quickly surfaced where his team was waiting for him. Fortunately, he was able to escape the attack relatively unscathed. In 1984, a team of French mountaineers climbed the Statue of Liberty in New York using suction cups and ropes as part of a publicity stunt. However, it's illegal to climb the statue, but Therese Okomu, who we're going to be talking about, was not the first person to attempt it. Although few have succeeded in the past century, the statue is approximately 305 feet or 93 meters tall from the base to the top of the torch. So, on July 4th, 2018, a woman named Therese climbed the Statue of Liberty to protest against the Trump administration immigration policy, particularly the separation of families at the US-Mexico border. She sat at the foot of the statue for over 3 hours, causing the evacuation of Liberty Island. Eventually, the woman was arrested by police and charged with 3 federal misdemeanors. Her climb sparked mixed reactions from the public, with some praising her as a hero, while others criticizing her for putting herself and others in danger. When this Indonesian boy was 18 years old, he got lost at sea for 49 days. But this was not a new experience for him, as he had experienced floating around the sea for 2 days to a week before. However, the third time when this happened in 2018 was by far the longest time. Aldi, as the boy's name, works as a fisherman on a wooden raft with a hut on top of it, which the locals also call rampong. The hut is anchored to the seabed with ropes to keep it from drifting far, and so he can catch fish. One day, Aldi's ropes snapped, causing his rampong to float away. During his first weeks at sea, he survived with his limited supplies. But after that, he had to catch fish and filter seawater with his shirt. It was a big challenge, but he kept praying for a positive outcome, until on the 49th day, a ship passed him and saved him. Ho Van Thon and his son fled into the dense Vietnamese jungle in 1972, after his wife and 2 other children lost their lives. For over 4 decades, they lived in seclusion, relying entirely on the natural resources of the wilderness to survive. Without any contact with the outside world, Thon and his son became skilled hunters and gatherers, making their own tools and weapons. Their shelter was a hut made of bamboo and leaves, camouflaged to blend in with the natural surroundings. They continued to live this way, deeply hidden in the jungle until 2013, when they were discovered by a team of villagers searching for firewood. The 2 were emaciated, barefoot, and covered in mosquito bites when they were finally found. The news of their discovery generated a wave of media attention, and the Vietnamese government acted swiftly. They brought Thon and his son to the hospital for medical care, and then returned them to their village. Despite the attention they received, Thon and his son remained out of the spotlight. All they wanted was to return to their hut in the jungle. Have you ever been in an impossible place, or have you ever gotten lost? Let me know in the comments. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos we made, click one on the screen or take a look at the channel. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.